So, rightio. So today, the presentation is around the threat landscape. It's around how that's impacting remote learning, remote working. Can be remote learning in some, when I do this presentation for education customers, but this is around how threats are evolving at the moment. And you'll see some quite stark figures. How if you don't have some sort of heuristic, advanced security, some type of threat intelligence at your gateway and at your endpoints, it's going to be a bumpy ride as you go on this journey of remote working. But we'll come on to that. In terms of introduction, my name is John Mark Wilkinson. I'm Sales Director for the UK and Ireland for WatchGuard. It's worth saying at this point that WatchGuard and ADM have had a long-standing relationship, many, many years, and we're proud to say that ADM, I believe, were one of the first in Europe to become gold certified on our partner program. What does that mean? And we'll touch on this at the end. What that means is that you are partnering with the right service provider, you are partnering with the right reseller, you're partnering with the right WatchGuard partner. You're partnering with somebody that has a large technical knowledge, a large amount of sales, commercial knowledge, and can really provide you guys with the best level of support. But you don't need me to tell that, I'm sure you know already. ADM look at WatchGuard as their main partner when it comes to perimeter firewalling. We'll talk about a few other things around endpoint, because obviously that's important as we look at remote, but we'll obviously look at predominantly what can be provided off the firewall that maybe you have or maybe you don't have, that you would want to deploy to really secure that new remote working environment that of course we've all had to set up very, very quickly, and there are a lot of risks that come with that. A little bit more about myself, again, sales director, but I've been in the industry now for about 25 years, 10 years with WatchGuard, always selling secure solutions in the channel, whether it's been at the reseller level, selling into customers, whether it's been at distribution into reseller or with vendor, selling all the way through the channel. So hopefully I should be able to give you some good insights, not just at the sort of high level vendor, high level pitch level, but hopefully there should be some details, sorry, that resonate for you. So what are we going to look at today? So let's go through the agenda, and I suppose just to give you some timings in your mind, this presentation will probably last about half an hour. Could go on a little bit longer, could go a little bit shorter, but ultimately we'll try and get through this in a prompt fashion. In terms of what we'll look at, well, the current remote working landscape. Crikey, over the last few weeks, probably a couple of months now, we've been asked to be extremely agile in the way we've gone from an office environment and quickly into remote working. If we are working in our offices, we'll come on to this, obviously social distancing, etc., etc. But there are inherent risks with this. And what are those inherent risks that we're going to talk about? Well, we need to protect people from accessing computers that your staff are now using. Are they using company laptops? Are they using their home laptops? When they're using a company laptop, are they always connected to the VPN? Are they taking that laptop, turning off the VPN and using it for just browsing various sites, which could then lead to the device becoming compromised? That would lead, as we said, protect your work environment from unsecure networks. So if somebody suddenly gets their laptop infected and they bring it back onto network, it could just shoot back up through the VPN, go into your key servers. It leads for all sorts of issues, but we'll again come on. We'll talk about how to provide secure access with essential applications. I'm sure you don't just use one application for your working, and your employees don't just use one application to work. There'll be a multiple number of applications that all require different passwords. And it's how we are able to provide one central sort of multi-factor password authentication method to enable you as customers to allow secure working across all your various applications. And of course, the most important thing, protect your credentials, whether it's on device, on server, wherever they're stored. These are what, and we'll see also that even if people steal your credentials, it's not really just the monetary value for that initial grab of credentials. It's actually for the damage that it will do generally to the individual of the credential, name, address, etc. We'll come on to that. And we'll talk about the threat landscape. As I've said before, this is incredible in terms of the types of advanced malware we are seeing in the UK at the moment. And this, we'll end with this because I took these figures yesterday, just due to timing. I didn't want to do them today, but I got these yesterday. And it stayed at this same level for a number of times. And I think you'll be shocked when you see it, and it will really drive your business decisions to look at your perimeter firewall, maybe to look at the software security features you've got on top. But well, let's come on to that. So here we are, the wonderful world that we now unfortunately live in. We live in a world of a global pandemic. And I'm sure you've heard of this so many times. And everyone's COVID this and COVID that. If the government's not saying it, and if you know, you're obviously you're talking about it within your family groups, your work environment. If the local council aren't saying something to you about, crikey, you've got to do this, or you're just talking to employees about, my word, we now have to work remotely. And if we're not working remotely, obviously social distancing. This virus, this pandemic, which isn't going away, and we keep using the word new normal because the new normal is what's going to happen, and it's what's going to be around now. I would say probably for the next couple of years. So what we have to do now is plan, as we've done already, to get where we are, but probably now to plan further and more strategically how, if we are going to keep this new normal, this remote working, how are we going to work to keep our employees safe, our families safe from obviously this virus. It looks like a vaccine is a year or so away. Treatments might be sooner, but ultimately we need to protect ourselves. Yes, we're being asked to go back to work slowly, but a lot of people's offices aren't able to cope. And let's talk about this a little bit more and get off this horrible page. But remote work access, and we can see it's not just me saying it, and you know, I'm sure you know this, but let's just have a look at, you know, over the last few weeks, it felt like years. Over the last few weeks, video conferencing, remote distance communication tools such as Zoom, GoToMeeting, have seen huge rises in terms of usage. I mean, just look at this, Zoom, 100 million new users in 3 weeks. That's an incredible growth. I'm sure if any of you guys got 100 million new customers in 3 weeks, that will be quite something. Now, of course, inherently with Zoom, we've all heard that there are a few security flaws, maybe there's some encryption issues, but hey, regardless, that is certainly a marker that tells us people are now using remote technologies. Twitter, even Twitter, the great remote tweeting tool. They have now said and turned around and said, well, yes, we've got these great offices, but quite frankly, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And what we're going to say is you can work from home forever. Now, if that isn't a marker in the sand to say, oh, hold on, if one of my staff reads this, or somebody in the team reads this, well, hold on, if Twitter can say you can work from home forever, and we've got IT, and we can actually work from home now, why can't I work from home forever? So maybe this really is something that isn't just going to be virus driven, it's actually going to change the mindsets of people to say, well, if I can work from home, why can't I work from home? Maybe that work-life balance is always going to change, Maybe it'd be better. Maybe people are just going to work, you know, rather than having to travel in, maybe they can get in from the bedroom to the office, as I am. And from the office, they can probably will end up having longer days. Maybe it will be more productive. Maybe we'll only go into offices for when we can, you know, face-to-face meetings, team meetings. I don't know. But it's just showing, as we can see, Twitter, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, okay, big companies. We are, just so you know, WatchGuard. Until the end of June, we have been told we are all working from home. Do we have offices? Yes. Do we have global offices? Yes. But we are all working from home. And of course, we're now going through that. How do we get back to work? There's various HR surveys that we're filling out. Are we able to go on planes again? Are we able to go on trains, etc.? But this is here to stay. So if this is here to stay, we now need to start thinking about, right, we're working from home. How do we secure that connection from the endpoint client, from the worker, back into the main office? Because as I've said before, and as we're going to talk to, there are so many risks to remote working. We've all seen this before. We've now seen this. So it's changing. We are getting back to work, but look at the first bit, first two statements. Stay at home, work from home. It's not going to change for a long time. And also, I was thinking about this the other day, even if we can go back into the office, how do you stay 2 meters apart down corridors? You know, it's so difficult. And I understand if you're a manufacturer, I understand if you're construction, I understand if you're healthcare, you've got to go back. But there, of course, are a lot of businesses where we can do things. Even things such as washing hands regularly. I mean, how do you enforce that in the workplace? I mean, are there just going to be queues continually outside the toilet or in the kitchen, 2 meters apart, literally wrapping themselves around the building? We'll see. But just to say, there are so many threats, and maybe, again, this is going to change people's mindsets around, well, I want to get back to work, but crikey, how am I going to enforce all of this? What we'll see as well, and what we'll talk to in the next slide, is there are so many companies, again, that are remote working where credentials are being lost. And why are credentials being lost? Because credentials are more exposed. And what are we talking about credentials? Usernames, passwords. And I can tell you now that just because we're using a password that's rather than our favorite pet, our daughter, our son, and maybe even take away from that, maybe we're now using random words, numbers, they can all be hacked in seconds. I'll come on to a slide in a moment that says, however detailed, whenever you're asked to put a randomized password together, it can be breached in 6 seconds. Passwords are insecure. Credentials are therefore exposed. If credentials are exposed, your networks are exposed. If your networks are exposed, your data is exposed. If your data is exposed, your company is at risk. And we will show you today how we can get over that. But let's give you some examples. Let's give you some examples how remote working can happen, can add to this risk. I mean, okay, I use Windows XP. One would hope you don't have any laptops or devices with Windows XP, because if people think Microsoft is vulnerable, and it's going to be vulnerable because it's out there, everyone has Microsoft. And if everyone's got something, there are going to be a lot of vulnerabilities for it. So it's not just, as people probably unfairly say, it's inherently vulnerable. It's inherently insecure. It's not. It's just everyone's got it. Everyone's gunning for it. If everybody's going for it in terms of all the cyber criminals, it's almost certainly going to be hacked a number of times. But however, there are some customers out there who will have older laptops, or will have employees, or will ask their employees to use their home laptops. I was speaking to a reseller the other day, or a customer the other day, I should say, and they said, well, when all this exploded and everybody had to go remotely, they wanted to buy laptops, but they couldn't. Well, okay, they could buy the most expensive, the most highly powered, biggest processors type style laptops. But quite frankly, when they had 200 staff and they were looking at X thousand per laptop, that's a big investment that they perhaps weren't planning for. So what they ended up doing is doing the best they could and buying what they could, and then asking some of their employees to work from home laptops. They had to do it. Luckily, they had some solutions that could help. But again, if somebody's running an older version of Windows that perhaps isn't supported, there is, inherent risk with that. Wi-Fi networks. Now, I know we're not out there using public Wi-Fi. I know we're not at coffee shops, and I know we're not, going to shops and just using their Wi-Fi. But let's just think about the Wi-Fi that your staff are using. Now, I work for WatchGuard, as you know. We provide access points, we provide our own firewalls, we provide our own multifactor, so we're fine. I've got probably, sadly, about 6 wireless access points here that are all linked back to our firewalls that provide all the security I would ever need. Do I need, I'm just theoretically not going to be hacked, one would hope, from my home. However, some people aren't as conscious. Not everybody like you, like us, are security savvy. Not everybody's thinking about it. Some people who live, and hold up a moment, let's think about the government, what they're saying. They're saying we've got to roll out fast internet because, 5G, all of this great stuff. We've got to have lightning quick connections. And why? Because people at home don't have it. So therefore, people may look around, as I'm sure I did when I was young, and looked for another connection that I could piggyback onto. My connection at home's rubbish, my neighbour's is good. Oh, here's one that's not secured, I might jump onto that one. It happens. And there are people out there that provide what we call evil twins, who will actually pretend to be the same access point that you would normally connect to. So people who aren't aware will just connect to it. That will take credentials, that will take details. It's happening. And it will happen in residential areas, it will happen, and it used to happen outside shops, may still do. These all lead to people being infected, and then you get things like credential, as we mentioned, related breaches. Nintendo, and also recently Weibo, which I read about the other day for probably a few, actually no, it was earlier this year. Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, was hacked, unbelievably, 500 million records gone. Nintendo, hacked, 170 million records gone. Now, the interesting thing about Weibo, and what I said right at the start, it's not actually the sale that the cyber criminals, it's the notoriety. I've been hacked into Weibo, and also it's just, okay, we'll sell it. And 500 million records went for $250. So that's 500 million Chinese people that could potentially have their laptops hacked, could get in. And you think of the companies, rightly or wrongly, that are in China, that are manufacturing, that are providing services and have links, more importantly, to companies like America, to the UK, to Australia, to everywhere in the world. If you can get into these people's accounts, you can therefore potentially get into their work accounts, which can then pivot off to global accounts all across the world. So by hacking into Weibo, you could potentially hack into government in the UK. Seems a long shot, but could happen. And the wonderful world of Cisco, again, much like Microsoft, lots of people have Cisco, so they're always going to be a bit vulnerable. But this was amazing. 46% of America's Cisco ASA VPNs were deemed as vulnerable, and urgent patches were required. Only 6% in the UK, but still, if I were to announce today that 6% of all WatchGuard firewalls needed to be patched instantly to prevent you from being hacked, I think you probably think that's quite a big threat. I'm gonna end this section on weak passwords. Weak passwords, as we said before, it's just ongoing. As much as we tell people don't use password 123, Don't use John Mark Wilkinson 12. Don't use Fred Blogs 246. Don't use the name of your cat, your dog, your daughter, your son, your whatever. Don't use it. People will. And why do people? Because they need a password to get into the laptop, a password to get into VPN or onto the network, a password to get into Facebook, to Instagram, to YouTube, to Gmail, to well, hold on a moment and we will tell you how that can all be resolved. And maybe, and I would argue, if you use some sort of multi-factor authentication solution, which we'll talk to in a moment, you could use a password that is John Mark 123. Simple, because there are different methods of authentication, multi-methods, it doesn't really matter what your password is, because it's based on challenge and response, as I'm sure you know. So quick steps, and I'm sure you've all done this already, but just something I thought about, you know, now we're all being asked to work remotely, just go through these things in your head. You know, obviously, and I'm sure you are, the most important thing was let's just get people out there, get people working, keep business as best we can. Okay, people were furloughed, fine. But if we need to keep people working, what are the additional risks? We've talked to some. Make sure the laptop is company owned, and if not, make sure it's secure. And we'll talk to that in a moment. Make sure we're using secure VPN so we can gain the benefit of all the security features that are back at the perimeter, back at the office. Don't just leave people to use their own laptops without any sort of encrypted VPN tunnels, because quite frankly, we're going to end it in a little bit of a mess if we do so. One thing also, and actually we have this on our firewall as well, which you may not be aware of, we partner with a vendor called KnowBe4, which is specifically for endpoint clients. And what it does is it has some technology on the box that if your employees click onto a phishing link, and we know what phishing emails are, they look like they've come from you to the employee and it asks them to do something. Oh, drop everything at the moment and come and work and come and email me. Just click, but by the way, click on this attachment and read. Click on the attachment, suddenly it launches an exploit that gets into your, I'm just checking the time actually, that's fine. Just check, that gets onto the laptop and could actually then start exploiting the laptop and then get onto the network. But what we can do is the technology that is based on DNS level filtering is once they click on that link, and even if they do click on that link, we'll spot it. We'll filter it, we'll spot it. Once we've spotted it, and when we spot it, rather than just not informing the employee, the endpoint, we will send a video to that endpoint, and rather than you've done something wrong, you put our network at risk, which a lot of these solutions do, it says, not your fault, that's fine. You know, we understand mistakes happen. Watch this video. And the video will then talk the end user through, and this is talk the end user through what they've done, what could happen if we hadn't spotted it, and how to spot these types of attacks in future, and the sort of things to look out for. Multiple videos that are sent to that employee every time they're doing it. So it's a learning experience. And again, if we're going to have these remote workers and we need to enforce them to adhere to certain work practices, then we need to make sure that we're teaching them, because it's not fair. No, not everybody is suddenly a security professional and can spot everything. You know, they might not be looking at the domain that's slightly different, or the email that rather than an L has a 1 in it. You know, these things are difficult to spot if you're working, but hey, activate multi-factor authentication. Key to everything when it comes to remote working. And we'll talk to that in a moment. This is what I meant before. And why is MFA key? And multi-factor authentication for these remote users is absolutely key because, as I've said, 6-character passwords. Oh, actually, that was slightly different. 6-character passwords can be cracked in 1 second. You know, Yes, you can use random words, but still there will be hacks. So what is secure MFA? So firstly, secure MFA, ADM provides MFA solutions. We provide MFA solutions. What it does in a nutshell, and this isn't a technical presentation, you know, we're not going to, just so you're aware, we do provide technical presentations on our website. There is a vast array of demos. You can log in, you can use it. As it says here, when we went into lockdown, us as WatchGuard thought, well, people probably aren't going to be able to invest in all these technologies. We'll give it to them. So we'll give it to you for 120 days because it's a 3 months initial sort of lockdown period, up to 250 users. So we're just making sure everybody's secure at home. But our MFA solution is it's very simple in the sense that it's, if you can see that, it's powered by an app that you would download via App Store on your Android app store, and it appears as an application. I don't know if you can see it, but this would be the application here, and the application here would have different forms of authentication, and this is the current key that's going through at the moment. We won't go into it, but what would happen is if you wanted to either log into the laptop or log into certain applications via challenge response, you would simply log into browser, put username, password, whatever password you wanted. That would send you a response down. You would then click accept. It would let you in. There will be a portal that would appear via that browser, and that would have anything from Salesforce, Bamboo if you use HR, Concur if you use different sort of expense report. It could have everything on there. The great thing as well with this multi-factor authentication solution, AuthPoint we call it, is not only can you use it for your work apps, but then the user who you are asking to use their mobile phone can actually use it for things like Instagram, could use it for their social media apps. So again, rather than having to log into each and every one of their social media apps, they would be able to challenge and response one and get access to all. Similar for the work, again, one response, one challenge and response, multiple users for all. You can use it online, offline via various codes. And as we've been seeing in the industry press, you know, the solution is very simple, easy to deploy, managed in the cloud. So no additional hardware required. And actually we were quoted as being a leader in 2020, and we're seeing a great upturn of those products. So do speak to ADM. I know they don't just sell, you know, WatchGuard and Multifactor. They also sell, you know, a number of other different solutions, all good products. As we mentioned before, crikey, I forgot to even put this slide in, but here we go. You know, the ecosystem is vast, cloud managed, driven by the mobile phone, and you can get access to all different types of apps. One of the biggest upturns, and we do a lot of webinars around this that we can get you access to, is around the securing of 365. Yes, Microsoft have their own, but via using a different type of multi-factor authentication solution, you can then broaden the spectrum of the types of applications you're giving your staff access to. And again, it secures the endpoint, it secures the user, and stops these issues of weak passwords that, although we try to stop, we just know our users are using. And also, you know, I'm sure you know this, and quite frankly, security professionals, everybody will be using VPNs, but it's just worth mentioning at this point that on the Firebox, which is the perimeter firewall we have, which you may have already, and if you don't, it comes with a multitude of different types of VPN technologies. We won't go through them all today, as I know time is short, but it is also always worth looking at the different types of VPNs that we provide, the ones that best fit with your remote working requirement, and just to make you aware that the two that you can see first, IKE V2 and mobile VPN with SSL, they are developed by us. The IPsec VPN client is an additional chargeable client. And now what I'll come on to talk to in about 10 minutes is our product set. And in terms of the product set, very quickly, you know, we work on a best of breed. So we sometimes partner with people. And what we've done, and you can go onto their website, we partner with a company called NCP client. All they generally do is VPNs. And that IPsec VPN client has got a lot of different types of advantages in terms of it is extremely fast. You can brand it yourself. So if people are logging in initially, it can have your company name rather than NCP. Seamless 4G routing, and most importantly, again, as you're working now remotely, it's got an integrated personal firewall. So these are things you might want to speak to ADM about. IKE V2, mobile VPN, extremely secure, but if you want that additional level, which a lot of our clients are now, again, because bundle it with the MFA, using the IPsec VPN client, you now have a very secure tunnel back to your main offices. So threat landscape, as I mentioned yesterday, I wanted to leave you with these, which I think are some quite incredible stats. Now, threat landscape, if you've been on these presentations before, excuse me, if you haven't, please, please, please use it. This is feeding a direct feed from our global operations center at WatchGuard. Our global feed uses around 44,000+ firewalls that are feeding in from all around the world. Now, when you say, oh, well, 44,000 firewalls and only 1 million attacks, that's in the last month, and this has been narrowed down to the UK. All you need to do is to go onto a website called www.secplicity.com or .org. If you go onto there, you'll get access to the threat landscape, which you can narrow down to the UK, and you can change it to a week, a day, a month, a year, whatever you want, so you can get a full view of the threats that are purporting into the UK. In terms of malware attacks, as I've said, what I've done is I've narrowed it down to the United Kingdom, as you can see. And I believe it's the next slide, which I think is quite amazing. I've built it up quite a bit, but I think it's quite amazing, is this. Drum roll, please. Now, this was taken yesterday. For the last month, 95% of the threats we are seeing out there that your remote workers will see, that you will see, that everybody will see in the UK, are 0 day. And only 5% are known. Now, when I was started in security, selling Symantec, I shouldn't say the name, but I did. But that's what happened. That's where I was. It was all signature driven, signature based. These are known threats. And okay, if it wasn't known and if it was a direct attack, then you had these great graphs about it's going to take X amount of time for you to spot it, and then X amount of time for you to create a signature, and then X amount of time for us to push it out. Now, if 95% are 0 day, well, what does that mean? That means nobody knows about them. That means 95% of the threats that are potentially attacking your company, no one has seen. It's almost as if they are a direct attack on your company. The only way to spot those, is ignore signatures, because signatures are obviously there for the viruses, the advanced type of malwares that you know. 0 day, nobody knows. It's a brand new variant. It's a different type of virus. It's a new type of WannaCry. It's a new type of CryptoLocker that no one's ever seen. So the only way we protect about those is by making sure that, one, nobody can get on to your laptop and start infecting it that shouldn't, because that's one of the ways, as we've said. If you have an insecure client remote machine, somebody clicks on and gets into it, then exploit it, and off it goes. You need advanced, heuristic, AI-driven, a mixture of different types of technology on the client and at the gateway. You need to make sure that both ends are secure. You need to make sure that your client is using those and has access to those types of solutions that will just look at these types, look at the traffic, interrogate the traffic, interrogate the virus, and make sure they can. And also what you need to make sure as well is a lot of these types of viruses can be obviously downloaded via the internet. Again, here's a huge issue. You've got remote machines that are being potentially taken off and used at home to go onto whatever websites, and then you download them through. And if you look obviously at the top of your browsers, you'll see HTTPS. Now that's a secure encrypted link, and not all solutions are equal. WatchGuard enables you, without suffering poor performance, HTTPS encryption. And we can offer, not that we offer it, we can unpacket it, analyze the traffic within that HTTPS, put it back together, and let it through if it's good, and block it if it's bad. So what we're saying here is, and one of the things I'll come on to talk about, when and if you're buying WatchGuard, do talk to ADM about what is called total security. And total security is a security package that lays on top of WatchGuard that provides you with these advanced types of. So let me give you an example. Let's come off this screen now, and we'll come on to here. So on top of our Firebox, and this is the last slide, I believe. Let's have a look. Yeah, well, 45 minutes it'll be, this presentation. Let's have a look at this last slide. The Firebox is our main product. We have rack mounted, which this is. I didn't put the picture in, but we have a tabletop, depending on the size of your organization. And on top, we have various levels of filtering. We have what we call standard security, which is a firewall and secure VPN. People still buy it, but ultimately, I believe that's insecure, but maybe they have it if they have a dual skin. WatchGuard to provide their VPN and something at the back, or vice versa. We have then basic security, and ultimately you'd cut the solutions you see here, these circles, in half. On the basic side, you have what we've always traditionally known as fundamental security. You've got to have your URL blockers. You've got to have your signature-driven AV for your perimeter. You've got to have your anti-spam, IPS, those types of technologies. But then when we come to the advanced or total security, this is where we do start seeing some real heuristic type client-driven solutions. You've got a product called TDR, sits on the client, sits along with your Sophos, your Kaspersky, your McAfee, and adds that extra level of heuristic support, signature-less driven support that will then talk to the firewall, centrally managed, can again and that comes as part of the solution. You can also put it onto your key servers to ensure that your web servers are secure, etc. We also have what we call advanced antivirus. We actually have two antiviruses on box. One, as I said, signature, the other which is AI driven. And we actually partner with a company called Silence, S-Y-L-A-N-C-E, Silence, bought recently by BlackBerry. But Silence, if you go online and read about it, it's an enterprise solution that we are now bringing into the SMB and mid-market. So you get that same enterprise level protection. And actually, let me touch on that point very quickly. Because as we've seen, and I'm going to go back, 95% of threats are 0 day, we are requiring enterprise level solutions. And now as a mid-market, small, maybe SME type industry, maybe we don't have those enterprise budgets that we can say, well, I'll buy this solution for this and this solution for that and that solution for this and this solution for that, because you have multiple different renewal times, multiple different renewal prices, multiple different servers, electricity costs, server costs, support costs, it costs. So on the one box, we're able to provide all these solutions that are enterprise level grade, such as silence. And let's mention something else. On the web blocker side, it's actually powered by WebSense, or what is now called ForcePoint. So you're getting probably two solutions that if you bought them individually would cost more than this solution. And we do that because we want to be the secure partner of choice for the SMB and mid-market across all verticals. So let's, in summary, go through what we've spoken about. Remote working is now with us forever. It was, but it's certainly, I mean, maybe forever is a little negative. It's certainly going to be the new normal. Your staff are now used to doing it. Your staff will now ask questions about why they can't continue doing it. That work-life balance, the ability to see family and work at the same time, is starting to resonate. So we now need to make or put solutions together to enforce that remote learning and secure that remote learning environment that we've created. Maybe you have, but maybe there's some extra things that you might want to think about. You might have the firewall, but maybe you don't have the multi-factor authentication to ensure that it is the right person getting onto the laptop. It's not, so here's one for you. It's not the employee's daughter or son going onto the laptop to play an online game where it's infected. That infection will then creep onto the laptop. When you fire up the VPN, your network's infected. So there are all these scenarios we need to think about. So make sure you've got a secure VPN, but obviously that's not the most important, but make sure you've got some sort of multi-factor on the back end. If you've got a WatchGuard firewall, or if you've got any other firewall, just make sure that all the security features that sit on top are secure. And make sure all the security features that you've got on top are as much as you can buy and as much as you can have. Because ultimately, going back to the previous slide, 95% of all malware we are seeing in the UK across multiple thousand devices are 0 day. If you don't have these solutions or a similar type, you may well be at risk. To end this presentation, I will say, and to reiterate, ADM Computing, as it said, your trusted IT service provider, they really are. They were one of the first in Europe to become a WatchGuard Gold Partner. And to become a Gold Partner, that means they have to have technical competence and certification, which is tested via online, quite rigorous exams across our main 3 pillars: wireless, perimeter firewall, and endpoint, which we talked to today about multi-factor. Make sure you partner with ADM, continue partnering with ADM. They are one of the best out there. They're a great local partner. And I don't know what else I can say. So suppose to final, as we look at the time, and it's 10:45, perfect timing. If you've got any questions, as we said at the start, speak to ADM. Whether it's technical, whether it's commercial, they'll link in with us. Maybe put them in the chat function before you go, so you can remember them. But we'll get back. There'll be a recording of this. It'll be on YouTube, all this sort of stuff. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure today to speak to everybody. If I saw you, we couldn't shake hands. We'd probably bump elbows. But look, thank you so much for being on the call today. It's been my pleasure, and hopefully see you soon. Stay safe, stay well. Bye-bye.